information comes from someone who identifies herself as being a former girlfriend. A lady by the name of Alex Gerlach spoke to a television station in Indiana, and she indicated that apparently she tried to warn people about this guy. She said, according to what she told a television station, for some reason he always hated people and wanted everyone to die. He got kicked out of school for having a dream that he killed everybody in his class. I have been in touch with high schools in Indiana, Plymouth High School as well as Bremen High School. They are both working on statements to be issued to the media probably a little bit later today. She also indicated that, she tried to warn people. She indicated to the Washington Post that she learned that Mr. Sebring purchased a gun last week, and that no one really thought anything about it because he always liked guns. We're also trying to get more information about the victims. We understand, according to NBC News, 4 of the victims were women who worked in the SunTrust Bank. The 5th victim was a customer of the bank who happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time.
And we're now just waiting for that press conference to begin, everybody, and we're going to go to it here on your screen. As you can see, a lot of microphone flags, a lot of microphones at this podium. This has now become a national news story, and we are moments away. We're going to be taking you to this press conference live, so don't go anywhere. We expect to hear from local and state law enforcement officials who are going to finally update us. The last that we had heard as far as credible information from authorities was yesterday evening, Steve, and now we've been waiting for this 11 o'clock press conference. We know that Governor DeSantis has been in Highlands County, and we expect to hear from really a lot of people and finally get a little bit more details here on a story that people have been clamoring for information for.
And we also know that the Attorney General, Ashley Moody, has made her way down to Highlands County and apparently has a support team for victims down there. We also know that Mr. Xavier was a former prison guard trainee who moved to Florida supposedly last fall with his mother from Plymouth, Indiana. The Governor DeSantis was down there yesterday. The Attorney General, newly elected Attorney General Ashley Moody, is down there today, from what we understand. Efforts are being made to reach out to Xavier's family members. We believe that he still has family in the Plymouth area of Indiana, and that is really in the it's what they call the Michiana area, where it borders a region in northern Indiana and southwestern Michigan, centered really in the city of South Bend, Indiana, where the University of Notre Dame is located.
Right, and one of the things that people, and I see in the comments, everybody, one of the things that people are really anxious to get information about, because all we've had right now, really since yesterday, is the information on the shooter, but there are a lot of people who are waiting to hear on information about the victims, the 5 people that were killed in this senseless shooting, and we're expecting to get more information on the 5 victims in this press conference. It can be really tricky, obviously, because the shooter was taken away in handcuffs yesterday, Steve. We saw the video. They announced the arrest. They released the mugshot, and we're gathering all of this information last night regarding the shooter. But because we don't know the identities of the victims, and as you're seeing, there's a 2-minute mark, so that's the 2-minute mark here for when the press conference is about to begin, everybody. So stick around. We're waiting for more information to come out on the victims, because we haven't heard anything about the 5 souls that were claimed yesterday.
Yeah, a little bit more information, if you'd like, JB, from this lady who identified herself as his girlfriend to WSBT television in South Bend, Indiana, Alex Gerlach, or Alexandra Gerlach. Apparently they had an on and off relationship for about 2 years. They kept in contact every few months. He often talked, according to her, about wanting to hurt people. She said he showed her a picture of a handgun, I think last month, when he purchased it, and she said she really didn't think anything of it. But she said she did try to warn people about his potential, and apparently that fell on deaf ears. And she said tried warning people in the past. No one believed her. He had a fascination with death and guns. This is according to an interview that she did with WSBT television in South Bend, Indiana. And again, she told the Washington Post in an interview that, among other things, that he purchased a gun last week and no one really thought much of it because he'd always liked guns. But on one hand, she's telling one entity that she tried to warn people about him. On the other hand, she's telling another entity that we really didn't think much about him getting a gun, but if he was fascinated with death and guns, there just seems to be some inconsistencies here.
Yes, Steve, in that report, Xavier often talking about wanting to hurt people, as you mentioned, and recently showed her a photo of a handgun, and that Gerlach telling WSBT TV that she didn't really think anything of it. So, everybody, if you're just joining us here on WFLA Now, we are moments away, probably within the next 60 seconds, of this press conference beginning. I'm News Channel 8's JB Buno here with 8 on your sides, Steve Andrews, and actually now the press conference is beginning, so let's go to the press conference from Highlands County.
I'd like to thank everybody for being here this morning. My name is Paul Blackman. I'm the Highlands County Sheriff. I'm going to make some brief introductions and then we'll get on with our press conference. Standing immediately to my right is Police Chief Carl Hoagland from Sebring Police Department. Next to him, to his right, is the Florida Attorney General Ashley Moody. Next to Ms. Moody is the State Attorney for the 10th Judicial Circuit, Brian Haas. We have Mayor John Shoup standing in the back from the City of Sebring. FDLE Special Agent in Charge, Shane Pollard, here with us this morning. And we have Mark Bayshore, the Highlands County Public Safety Director. And Austin Maddox, a captain with the Sebring Fire Department. And lastly, we have Commissioner and County Commission Chairman Jim Brooks with us here. Please understand that it is our goal to be as transparent as possible regarding this incident with the media and concerned citizens. However, some of your questions will not be answered as this investigation is still in its most infant stages. So to protect the integrity of the investigation, we ask for your cooperation and patience. And note we will open the floor to questions at the end of the press conference. We would like to recognize the representatives from SunTrust Bank as they wanted to be here for the press conference this morning. However, they wanted to spend additional time with the family members of those who were tragically taken during this incident. As the Sheriff, I would like to take this opportunity to thank members of the Highlands County Sheriff's Office, particularly our dispatchers, our SWAT team, our Crisis Negotiation Team, the Highlands County Fire and EMS, Sebring Police Department, Sebring Fire, FDLE, FBI, all for working in concert and working together to put their lives on line for the protection of the citizens that we serve. In closing, and most importantly, we will continue to pray for the families who lost loved ones during this tragic event, as well as our community that we continue to serve. I'll introduce you now to Chief Hoagland from Sebring Police Department.
Thank you, Sheriff. Yesterday, our community suffered a tremendous loss at the hands of a heinous criminal. Zephan Allen Xavier knowingly and intentionally took the lives of 5 of our fellow community members. Our sisters, our mothers, our daughters, and our co-workers. Perhaps most unfortunate is that now we refer to them as victims of a senseless crime. While in contact with the victims' families, several have requested that we not release their information in accordance with Marsy's Law. I'm going to honor their requests. We've had additional requests that the victims be identified from other families. And I'm going to honor those requests as well, to honor their loved ones' memories, to honor our citizens, and to honor the people who call Sebring home. Miss Cynthia Watson was one of the people in the bank who senselessly lost her life yesterday as a result of the actions of a criminal. Miss Marisol Lopez was another victim of a crime here in Sebring. The incident began yesterday at approximately 12:30 when 21-year-old Zephan Zaver entered the SunTrust Bank with a gun. He immediately contacted bank employees and a bank customer and overtook the bank by force. He then shot everyone in the bank. After shooting them, he called 911. This occurred at approximately 12:36. He told dispatchers that he had killed 5 people in the bank. The wherewithal and the thoughts and the acts of our dispatchers were to maintain telephone contact with him until responding officers could arrive. Units from the Highlands County Sheriff's Office responded and arrived at approximately 12:40, with officers of the Sebring Police Department arriving 2 minutes thereafter. These units maintained tactical observation and control of the scene until supporting and additional units could arrive. Crisis negotiators also arrived on scene and established contact with Mr. Zaver. At 12:44, a SWAT call-out was done in hopes that we could assume tactical responsibility of the scene. During crisis negotiations with Mr. Zaver, it appeared he was not going to allow officers of my agency and the Sheriff's Office access to the victims in the bank. At that action, I requested the Sheriff's Office SWAT team make a tactical entry into the bank. This was accomplished at 1:54 p.m. Upon entering and securing the scene, these tactical units took Zephan Zaver into custody at approximately 2:28 p.m. and they immediately began coordinating victim assessments. Unfortunately, all victims had succumbed to their injuries inside the bank. As the sheriff mentioned, this is an ongoing criminal investigation, and it is an active crime scene as we speak. Zephan Zaver has formally been charged with 5 counts of murder in the first degree. I cannot state how much I appreciate the assistance of our local partners, including the Sheriff's Office, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the FBI, the Attorney General's Office, and the coordination and collaboration of SunTrust personnel, staff, and leadership. SunTrust has explained and wants you to know that their leadership is here. They are on site in Sebring. They are meeting with employees of the bank, they're providing support to families of the victims, and they are cooperating fully in our investigation. We now begin the healing process. We attempt to make sense of a senseless act. We attempt to mourn the loss of our peers, our neighbors, our mothers and daughters. It's a time for us to come together. It's a time for us to heal. And it's an opportunity for us to look back, reflect, and build strength based upon a senseless act. Thank you. I'll turn the floor over to Ms. General Moody.
It is unfortunate that nearly just over 2 weeks in a new administration, a community, one as small as Sebring, just over 10,000 people, has to deal with a tragic situation and a loss of their own. At times like this, when you have consummate professionals in law enforcement trying to preserve the integrity of an investigation and a prosecution, you have communities in chaos and heartbreak and families of victims trying to determine what their next step is going to be. As soon as we heard of this information, my team and I came down here. We've been on site meeting with victims' families, providing them assistance, knowing that we are here for them both in a support role to discuss steps going forward and providing expenses for grief counseling, loss of life expenses, and other things that they should not even have to think about at a time like this. I commend the actions of the Chief of Police, the Sheriff, FDLE. Please know that the law enforcement agencies have worked together in a cooperative manner to ensure that they can move forward successfully in the legal system. We stand ready to assist them. We stand ready to assist the victims. And we have been meeting with SunTrust representatives. Dozens are here from around the nation so that they can help their corporate family heal. Going forward, this will not be a quick process. I can tell you as a former prosecutor and judge, successfully moving forward to ensuring that someone responsible for such a heinous act takes cooperation by law enforcement, skilled prosecutors, and patience by a community that wants justice. We are with you. We will be with you throughout this process and with law enforcement.
Good morning. As state attorney, it's my responsibility to prosecute this case, and that we will do. We have two priorities. One, to build the best case possible to ensure prosecution that ends in a successful result, while seeking everything that we can, the maximum allowed by law. The second priority is to be there for the families of the victims. They are hurting today in an unbelievable way, and we want to be there for them to make sure that with the terrible thing that they've been through, that this next step, the criminal justice process, goes as smoothly as possible. I'll be convening a grand jury in the next couple of weeks, where I'll seek indictments for first-degree murder, and I'll certainly be meeting with the families of the victims and going over all of these steps with them in detail. This community is hurting unbelievably. Any community that would have a case like this happen with 5 murders would be so difficult. But a community the size of Sebring is just unbelievable. But if there is a place that can make it through this, it's Sebring and it's Highlands County, and we will. Thank you.
Good morning. This is truly an unusual event for our community, something we thought we couldn't happen. Yesterday our world was rocked by something that we couldn't even fathom here. Our hearts go out to the individuals that lost their lives, to their families, to friends and coworkers. They're part of our community, and so we see them on a daily basis, and you can't imagine the pain and suffering that this entire community is going through. We have a wonderful community here, and this kind of senseless cowardice act is just something that's not even in our vocabulary. We've been fortunate that hundreds of people, thousands of people throughout the world have actually touched our hearts and offered prayers and condolences and guidance to help us get through this. I do want to just give special thanks to our Chief Hogan and the Sebring Police Department, with Paul Blackman and the Highlands County Sheriff's Department, our EMS, our fire departments, all our responders, everybody that was involved with this. It was about a 2-minute response time once the call came in, and they have taken this to heart. We know people in it. They're related to our staff, so it is really a sad event from that standpoint. These individuals and first responders, they put themselves in harm's way all the time, something we can't as a citizen realize until we see something like this, and they do it without even questioning to it. We have not changed here, but our world has. We need to continue living our lives as freely as we have in the past, with the love and effort that our community goes. Our community is a very caring and giving community. It gives back as much as we give to it. We'll walk through this together. This event will pass, but unfortunately it'll never be forgotten. It is now part of our history, and we need to remember from years to come. None of us are untouched by what has happened. We will all grieve in our own way. We need you, everyone out there, to hug your family, your friends, co-workers. Anywhere you go is to give them the peace of mind. We need to continue to pray for those that are no longer with us, that suffered such an unfortunate event, and especially their families and what they're going through in that. With this together, we will all walk through this in a peaceful manner. Thank you.
We'll now open the floor for questions, and please bear in mind this is a very active investigation. It's an active crime scene. I'll attempt to answer any questions I can. There will be questions we will not be able to answer. It's not with the goal of hiding anything, obviously. Transparency is something that we embrace. We have to ensure the successful prosecution of this criminal act, hold this person accountable for the tragedies that he has committed. Sir?
Chief, I'm just wondering if you may not be able to say, but have investigators learned anything about his motive, what his thinking was? And even if you can't tell us what it was, Can you tell us if at least they've heard anything on what he was thinking?
We have no information as to this time as to what his true motive may have been. We believe that it is a random act. We do not believe anybody was specifically targeted, but we are still trying to establish obviously what has occurred, the gravity and the nature of why it has occurred, and try to put things in perspective that we can understand.
There were no charges for bank robbery or attempted bank robbery. Did he go in there attempting to rob this bank or just simply to kill?
We have no information right now that there was any bank robbery, and I cannot elaborate anymore because I don't know what his true intent was beyond the acts that have been committed.
The two people that you named, were they both bank employees?
One was a bank customer, one was a bank employee. The bank customer was Miss Cynthia Watson. The bank employee was with Marisol Lopez.
Were they all women who were killed?
Yes.
Chief, talk to us about the process. Why did you call the SWAT team in? How did you make that decision?
When the crisis negotiations team established contact with him, there was no compromise on his part. Our primary goal was to attempt rescue and provide victim care, and he was not willing to afford us that opportunity. So in an attempt to make that opportunity happen, we conducted a tactical entry into the bank.
At that point, did you think the victims were still alive? At that point, were you under the assumption the victims may still be alive?
We hoped the victims were alive.
Were the other three employees, the other three people that were killed?
Yes, the other three were employees.
Were all five female? Any idea how long this guy was planning this attack?
Okay. First, yes, all five were female. We have no background information as to whether or not this was a planned attack.
Banks
Do you
often...
think the death penalty?
I would defer to counsel for that. As mentioned by the State Attorney, Mr. Haas, we will seek the highest penalty possible to hold this person accountable for their actions.
All right, one more question, guys. Last question.
Okay. Did he know
Banks
that
have security systems. Have you seen the video that happened, and have you reviewed it? And can you describe what you see? Is it cold and calculating? Is there a video of the horror that took place?
There is surveillance video that has been obtained. It is being reviewed by investigators, and I do not know the specific content of that to answer your question more directly. Last question, ma'am.
Did he know any of the victims?
We have no known connections to the suspect or any of the victims at this time.
Or the bank?
Aside from perhaps driving by and seeing it was a bank, we have no known motive that he's targeted this bank for any particular reason or any particular motive. Thank you.
Chief, his ex-girlfriend says he recently purchased a gun. Do you know if that's true?
Welcome back, News Channel 8's JV Buno here with 8 on your side, Steve Andrews, and we were just listening to that press conference along with you here on WFLA Now, and we're now learning more details as to what transpired yesterday around 12:30 in that SunTrust Bank in Sebring. We are now learning that the 5 victims were all females, and we're also learning a little bit more as to what occurred between SWAT teams making entry, but we really don't have a motive yet, Steve Andrews, right? I mean, we're still trying to figure out exactly what motivated Zeph Zaver to enter the SunTrust Bank and begin shooting. And one of the things that we were wondering too, did he kill everyone in there? And yes, there were 5 women in there at the time. All 5 of them were shot and killed.
Yeah, that was the first question that the folks at the podium took. What was the motive? And Chief Carl Hoagland of the Sebring Police Department indicated that they have no information about the true motive behind this crime. They believe it is a random act at this time. Then there is no known connection, he said, between the suspect and the employees or the bank as far as he knows. What I thought was kind of interesting, JB, is that as the chief was speaking about the people that were killed, the sisters, mothers, daughters, I don't know if you noticed, but his voice began cracking, very emotional.
A lot through that press conference.
Yeah. He indicated that a Cynthia Watson was a bank customer who was killed. Marisol Lopez was a bank employee who was killed, and there were 3 other bank employees who lost their lives as well. He indicated that the timeline for the events were at 12:30 Zaver entered the bank. Apparently he shot everyone in the bank. About 12:36, he told dispatchers that he had killed 5 people in the bank. The sheriff's office arrived within 4 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes I should say, at 12:40, and Sebring police arrived just a couple of minutes at 12:42. They attempted crisis negotiations. They were trying to get in to determine if they could help or assist the victims. When he would not allow them into the bank, they decided it was time for the SWAT team to move in.
Yep.
Unfortunately, when they did, they discovered all the victims had succumbed to their injuries.
And that last question, and I was really grateful that whoever the reporter was getting in, it might have actually been the second to last question that was asked towards the end of this press conference, but did Zephan Zaver know any of the women in there? Was there any connection to the bank? Did he know one of the tellers? Did he follow a customer in? As of right now, based on the preliminary investigation by the Highlands County Sheriff's Office, in addition to other authoritative agencies in the area, the answer is no. They haven't been able to establish any connection between the 5 female victims and Zephan Zaver, which, if that holds to be true, Steve, that would make this a random act of violence, that Zephan Zaver went in there and just started shooting for his own reasons, whatever reasons those are. We don't know exactly what those reasons are at this time, but there was not a targeted victim in this case, at least that we know of as of right now.
Yeah, again, that sort of, if that is the case and if that holds true, that sort of goes hand in hand with what this lady who identified herself as a former girlfriend said, that this was somebody who had a fascination with death and guns. We heard from 4 or 5 different folks this morning: the sheriff of Highlands County, Paul Blackman; Carl Hoagland, the chief of the Sebring Police Department; Ashley Moody, the state's attorney general; Brian Haas, the state attorney; and of course the mayor of Sebring, John Cho. What the state attorney indicated, the prosecutor indicated, is that they are going to build the best case possible, seek justice. They are seeking the maximum that will be allowed by law. He has been charged with 5 counts of capital murder, and maximum that is allowed by law under that is the death penalty. He also indicated, Mr. Haas indicated, that they'll convene a grand jury within the next couple of weeks, and he will seek indictments for first-degree murder against Zephan Zaver. The mayor of Sebring indicated, they all thanked law enforcement for their quick action, putting themselves in harm's way to help protect the community. And his message was basically one of, we need to keep going forward. We'll walk together through this. Everyone out there, why don't you try to hug your family, your friends, and even your co-workers today, because this is one of those days when everybody needs one.
An absolutely terrible story, a terrible circumstance of events, and there are a lot of people in the comment section from both yesterday and today that were just asking why. Why did this happen? I don't know if we have any more clarity from the press conference. The most clarity that we have is again from Gerlach, who, like you said, Steve, that Zaver had an obsession with death, that he had fascinations with killing others, according to that interview. So we were hoping to find out a little bit more from investigators as to why this might have occurred, but it sounds as if right now they don't even know. And their preliminary investigation and trying to figure out what led to these circumstances at the bank yesterday, we still don't know a motive. We still don't know why this occurred.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that his girlfriend told one of the media outlets was that he had been apparently kicked out of school because he had a dream about killing his entire class. If that is true, I mean, that is a big red flag, and you kind of want to know when that happened, what happened afterwards, who addressed this, was there counseling, was there help? We do know, or we are being told, that he and his mother moved from Plymouth, Indiana to Florida sometime this past fall. And we also understand that he had applied to become a corrections officer at Avon Park, but had dropped out of that career apparently. Again, no indication that there were any disciplinary actions against him. as he was training to become a corrections officer. And once again, Chief Hoagland indicated that the suspect here knowingly and intentionally took the lives of 5 innocent people. As he was describing this, again, voice cracking, very emotional, makes me, he said, I believe he said that there people in law enforcement had connections or ties to these victims. And I think Sebring, being the small community it is of 10,000 people, probably very, very likely, JB.
Yeah, and we, another thing that people, there was an unconfirmed report that we're still learning, that we had actually confirmed in the press conference, was that it was 5 female victims. And it doesn't sound, Steve, it doesn't sound to be that he went in there with the intention of killing female victims. It sounds as if, and correct me if I'm wrong based on the press conference, that he went in there with the intent of just killing as many people as he could, and it just happened to be 5 females in there. We didn't hear anything about him specifically targeting these 5 individuals because they're female, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, and again, the chief pointed out at the very end there that as far as they can tell, no connection between the victims and the suspects. The Attorney General, Ashley Moody, pointed out that Sebring is a community in chaos at the moment. She has a team working with victims' families, providing grief counseling. She also commended law enforcement. She said the Attorney General's office stands ready to assist these folks. Dozens of Sun Trust representatives apparently are in Sebring as well, working with the victims' families.
I want to take this opportunity, everybody, we're only going to be on Facebook Live here for a couple more minutes, but I'm going to take this opportunity to ask for questions in the comment section here on Facebook Live. Again, one of the benefits of being on WFLA Now is that we can take questions from you in case maybe you're just joining us and you missed the press conference, or maybe you have some questions to topics that we haven't really covered just yet. But one of the commenters making a really a point that you don't really think about until you really think about it. I know that sounds crazy, but is that what if there were children in there? What if there had been kids in that bank? Would Zeph and Xavier entering that place armed, entering that bank armed, would he have maliciously gunned down children? It sounds as if he went in there with the intent of ending life, and he did that, and we have 5 female victims in this case. But what if one of the females in there had been in there with their child? It's something to, it's something that makes you wonder if this could have been far worse. Now, granted, we are talking about 5 victims dead. This is a horrific situation, but it was mentioned by a commenter who said, thank goodness there were no kids in there, because this man, it seems to be, based on everything we've heard thus far, went in there with the intent of doing mass damage to everybody in there, and it could have been worse, Steve.
Yeah, well, let me run through the timeline real quickly again for folks. It all happened very, very quickly. The chief of police indicated that Xavier entered the bank at about 12:30, and at about 12:36 he had already shot and killed 5 people. He called the dispatcher and told him that he had killed 5 people in the bank. HCSO arrived within minutes, as did the Sebring Police Department. Crisis negotiators arrived on scene. Their immediate intention was to get in the building, to take care of the victims, to try to see if they could recover and save them. When it became apparent that he had no interest in allowing anybody in, that's when the chief of police asked the sheriff's office to move the SWAT team in, and from what we understand, the armored vehicle plowed through the front door, apparently allowing the SWAT team members to get in there. Apparently there was some negotiation going on inside the bank, and then he finally gave himself up. You're seeing video here of him being walked yesterday, and they took him into custody. This morning, I believe he had a first appearance in court. And as we indicated a little bit earlier, the state attorney, Brian Haas, says he will convene a grand jury within the next couple of weeks seeking first-degree murder indictments against Mr. Xavier.
A lot of people asking, Steve, about the type of gun that was used. I know that in the report that we had last night, based on Gerlach's interview, that there was a handgun that was purchased. by Xavier reportedly, but I'm trying to remember from the press conference, was there anything mentioned about the weapon that was used?
No, there was nothing mentioned about the weapon at all, which is a very good question. That's something we should all probably effort and see what we could get. We do know that the chief said that there is surveillance video. Every bank is loaded with surveillance cameras, so you know that this was videotaped, unfortunately, from every angle, and they're going to get a bird's eye view. He apparently said they are in the infancy stages. The sheriff pointed this out, and he said, listen, we're not going to be able to answer all of your questions. We want to be as transparent as we possibly can with the media and the public, but we won't be able to answer every question because this investigation is in its infancy, and there is information they just don't know. There's information they're not going to let out as of yet, including at least 3 names of the victims,
right.
Which the families have asked that these names not be released, and
right.
so the law enforcement has gone along with those.
And there were a lot of people in the comments here asking about the why we only know 2 names of victims at this point, and that was because the families of the other 3 are requesting privacy at this time. And Steve, we were talking a little bit earlier. We heard from Ashley Moody, and one of the things too is that he called 911 on himself. That is a public. So you were talking about surveillance footage,
yeah.
Security footage from inside the bank. How about the evidence that they have in the 911 call? Remember, he goes in there, according to investigators, shoots everybody in the bank, kills the 5 female victims, and then he calls 911. And all 911 calls are recorded, so they must have the recording of the 911 call of Zeph and Xavier allegedly calling 911 in the aftermath of the shooting to let authorities know that he had just committed this heinous crime. So there's so much evidence here that is likely being gathered against him, and for the prosecution, it's going to be really a plethora of different things at their disposal to, make sure that we have 5 convictions on those capital murder charges for Zeph and Xavier.
This is absolutely, the 911 tape is a significant piece of evidence, as I'm sure the surveillance video will be, and of course, grabbing Mr. Xavier in the bank with the gun, that pretty evident in and of itself. So many things, a successful prosecution depend on so many things, as the Attorney General said, and as Mr. Haas said, and you kind of wonder going forward, what is this guy going to plead to? Is he going to plead? Are they going to claim insanity? And then there's always the argument, is anybody really sane who goes in and commits an act like this? Something snapped, we don't know, but again, just a horrific situation. Speaking with folks who were out of state last night, they're telling me, we're reading about this and we're just heartsick. People up in New York, people in New England, they're just heartsick about what's happened here. And this is like the 4th or 5th mass shooting in Florida in the last 3 years. So it's just mind-boggling what's happening here.
Well, Steve, I know that you are going to be working as part of our team coverage tonight, and that's what we want to let everybody here on WFLA Now know about. We have team coverage of this bank shooting that left 5 dead yesterday, that being Wednesday, in Sebring, Florida, at the SunTrust Bank here on your screen. And then, of course, here's the video that we were rolling yesterday of Zeph and Xavier, 21 years of age, being escorted by authorities after his arrest for the shooting. So we're going to have team coverage of everything. We're going to break down the press conference as well as find out what we know about these victims to honor the lives of the victims that were senselessly taken in this shooting yesterday. And we'll have a variety of different reporters delivering all the different aspects of this story and anything that you want to know about. So be sure to tune in for all of our coverage tonight on News Channel 8, beginning with First at 4 o'clock. We'll have it in our 5 o'clock newscast, our 6 o'clock newscast, all of our newscasts throughout the day here in the Tampa Bay area. That will include 8 on Your Side, Steve Andrews. Steve, thanks so much for being with us here, and everybody on Facebook Live, thanks for joining us here for the press conference. You can watch that press conference again on Facebook here, as well as you can read more in this story in the link to the article in the description on this video here on Facebook. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us. I'm News Channel 8's JB Buno, again with Steve Andrews. Have a good rest of your Thursday.